I'm Kristen Andre, founder and chief strategist of Andre Consulting Group. I founded my company almost 10 years ago because I love helping people not only succeed, but thrive in their careers and their lives. So many times I meet amazing people who have so much more potential than what they're utilizing. As I engage with them, there seems to be a common theme: the limits they place on themselves. Throughout this podcast series, we're going to visit some incredible people who have created more intentional lives for themselves, those who've had that no limits moment where they chose to grow and they put things in motion to help them do so. We will focus on how you can break through limits. We will equip you with strategies to help you lead a more intentional life, and we will have a lot of fun along the way. So let's dive in. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the No Limits with Kristen Andre podcast. I am very excited today. We have Angela Raub, who is the Chief Sales Officer for Leadercast, with us here today, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about Leadercast. But if you're not familiar with it, I am a huge personal professional growth person and just junkie. I take everything in, and Leadercast is, I think you said, the world's largest one-day leadership event, right?
Yes,
right,
absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
So we've been around for 17 years. John Maxwell and Jeremy Kubicek are our founders. And so we are known for the world's largest, as you just said, one-day leadership event around the world. So as people are in our arena, which is the Infinity Energy Arena on May 4th, we will simulcast that out around the world to about 635 host sites.
Wow.
And so it's really exciting. It's an inspiring day that hundreds of thousands of people, close to about 140,000 people, will be viewers on the day of the event. And so through that, we've developed our platform to develop leaders worth following around the world.
I love that. I love that. Just leaders worth following. And there's so many leaders out there. And I think what I've enjoyed about watching Leadercast and following is they pull everybody together. I mean, you get a lot of different perspectives and everything.
That's the thing, and thank you for appreciating that. It's been really interesting. I've been here this is going on my second year, and we work really hard, our content team, to make sure that we have a diverse speaker cast.
Right.
And diverse meaning different verticals of business, or the first female this year. We have the first female African-American astronaut, Dr. Mae Jemison.
Yeah.
And so we have commitment to bring people on stage who have been groundbreaking and those that are thought leaders. But we really want people to come and feel like, oh my gosh, out of 9 speakers that I heard that day, there were 3 people that blew me away, and that we have amazing stories of people who go quit their job or start their own business, and they've always had an entrepreneurial heart. So it's very cool.
I think that's what I like, is that it kind of reaches everybody. It reaches the entrepreneur. And I know in your background professionally, because you've got a pretty impressive background even before coming to Leadercast. So you've risen through a lot of companies and held very high executive positions. What has been important to you about development and personal development? I mean, what have you really sought out in your own career?
Well, thank you for the compliment. But what I love is I was pretty intentional over the last 8 years of my career after I went through my first and only reduction in force. Yeah. I actually thought I was walking in to be promoted. And on that day, I think all the serotonin in my mind was like, what just happened? And so it's really been, in this season, 8 years coming from higher education, running an executive program, the professional MBA program, and then always being passionate about leadership development that has me here at Leadercast. But that passion of development is every day we wake up, I think that individuals, you're a leader. People are individual contributors, but we're a leader in the world. And we certainly live in a time where our culture and our country in particular and our world require that all of us rise to the task to lead out. And so we get to be a part of that. But it's just, my passion is my fuel for that.
That's really neat. I didn't realize that about you, that's what really changed the career, because I can't imagine walking into a room thinking, this is great, I've got a promotion coming, this is fantastic, and then them saying, yep, we're a lot of us have been through reduction of forces. I've been in corporate environment where I had to be the one to lay people off, and it's never a fun thing, but sometimes those challenges or the things that we would normally view as a setback launches something new.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And honestly, though, the day that I went home, I loved my job. And then when I went home and told my daughter, a word that we're not allowed to use in our home is hate. Yep. And so my daughter said, I hate da-da-da, where I was working. And I made her go to her room. And then I went to my room and cried. But you're correct. I think those moments when you think it's the absolute gut-wrenching, bone-breaking moment is that I've been so intentional to say, I'm going to take different positions in fields that I know nothing about, because I'm going to challenge myself, but I'm going to use it as stepping stones to really make sure that as I develop as a female executive, that I stretch myself. And honestly, to feel weak is when you feel your best and grow.
And it's, we were talking earlier today about that when you get to that moment where you feel like, and the fear starts to pull you back and you're not wanting to move forward, or you're scared to take that next step. And frequently that's the point we get to where the breakthrough's about to happen.
Absolutely.
So when you guys, in your career and with the work Leadercast does with helping people, where do you see the biggest breakthroughs? Where do they usually come from? And when you highlighted the event, when we talk about inspiring stories, I am amazed how people, even from last year being my first year as an employee, I've been a fan of the brand for 7 years, that will write to us that it was an aha moment. And when you have that many people that are viewing it, we have an incredible gift that we're given from our viewers and attendees, because that is a pipeline of people. So we hear greater stories from that. Right. And that's what fuels all of us as well. But I think it's that just moment of one person's story, and you talk about fear, to hear them say, I overcame it because of this. And all of a sudden they're like, that resonated with me. I can do this. I can quit my job. I do have enough money in my short-term savings, things like that. Right. And we, when we came up with the idea of doing this podcast, and I titled it No Limits, what kept coming to me, and the reason why the name kept coming back, was I feel like everyone has this no limits moment. All of us haven't had it yet, but, or maybe we have several throughout our lives, but it's that moment where we're like, the switch flips and we go, okay, you know what? I can do this. I can definitely do this. And what's motivational for me, I like to hear the underdog stories. And, I was looking over the lineup for Leadercast this year because I'm planning to attend, as you know, and I had it pulled up, and my daughter is obsessed with SpaceX and NASA. And so she saw the female astronaut, and she's just turned 13, and she's like, that's so cool. To have people that kind of overcame odds and kind of the switch flipped and said, I don't care what my limits are, I'm breaking past it. I feel like the opportunity to pull those type of people together, especially at a big event like that, I love hearing those stories. So what's your favorite kind of breakthrough moment that you've heard from somebody else?
Well, someone that I know and who will also be on our stage this year, a friend, is Kat Cole. And to hear Kat speak of her experience as her parents separating and being the oldest of 3 daughters, and that moment of when her mother told her that her parents were separating, and she said, what took you so long?
Oh, wow.
And to know that they lived on $10 a week. And look at her experience. I mean, at 27 years old, she was a VP at Hooters, and now is COO and president of Focus Brands, and she's not 40 years old yet. Oh, so wow. She has an incredible story, but it comes from and it probably resonates with me, not only because she's an amazing person, but as a single mom myself. Yep. I think that our children, my daughter's my greatest success in life. At the moment I take my last breath, you can go over my career, but it's going to be that woman. Yeah. Because she's incredible. And I know with your daughters as well, that is our greatest success. But they've seen our fear. Right. And there have been moments where our daughters have lifted us up. Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, the crying, and and I think all the women listening can relate. We all have that bathroom moment where mine wasn't a bathroom, mine is my closet. I have a nice walk-in closet. That was where was insulated, because I think all of us have that moment where it's like either fear's creeping in or just things aren't going right. And we always pull ourselves up and we always get through, but you want to be that good example for your kids. And sometimes they're the ones that lift you up. And I feel like children have those moments too, those no limits moment. And it is the example that we set for them that kind of teach them how to overcome it.
So,
one thing as far as over the last, if I look at the last 5 years, so that 8 years when I went through that reduction in force and then trying different business verticals and expanding my resume and my roles and my functions. And so when I came to Leadercast, it was a long date of courting me to hire me, and it was about a 7-month process. So it was for enterprise sales. And after about my third interview, I went in, and I'll never forget the CEO at the time who said, I want you to be the chief sales officer. And in my head, I had gone through this really difficult season, right? I call it my winter season. And all the fear crept in. And I remember taking my hands on the arms of the chair and just kept pressing in like, what's happening right now? And because it took me completely off guard. And I went in my car and made sure none of those employees were walking around the parking lot, and I bawled because it was a blessing. And it was also a moment of knowing that through surrendering that fear and really holding my confidence as much as I could at that moment, and it was a victory. And then I called my daughter, and we shared that cry together.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congrats. And obviously you're doing great stuff there because it's working. The brand is growing, and you guys I know are adding a lot of different components in terms of the brand and getting development out to more people with some of the online learning. And I think there's a lot more to come. I mean, it's been around forever. And honestly, with a founder like Maxwell, I mean, you've got pretty good name recognition. So I think I'm excited that there are companies like that exist, because I feel like in corporate America, which you've worked in a lot of companies don't have the leadership and the strength and the bandwidth to be able to impact people the way they need to.
Absolutely. It's funny you should say that. I'm doing an audiobook called Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. And I watched some of his on YouTube this weekend, but it's about how we cannot function like our old organizations. Right? 30% of employees, only 30 are engaged with their job. And so I'm always listening to different podcasts and trying to do different research to understand. And as we see with leadership, and not specific to our country, but all leadership in corporate America as well, everybody's dying on the vine, and we're seeking. And so there is amazing opportunity for us to have solutions. And then like yourself, Kristen, with this amazing podcast and with what you do as a coach, those are relationships, and we have you as a partner. And so all the people that are in our community at Leadercast, we have women like yourself, all people, men and women that are executive coaches that we like to introduce to people that are part of the Leadercast family, because we want to be a vehicle. It's not our lane, but we want to pass that off to help enrich them throughout the year, not just the one-day event.
Right. And thank you for that. And I agree. I mean, it's leadership and growth and development is not a singular event. But sometimes those singular events, like your full day, it's that spark. It's that, like I said, the aha moment, or, the light switch flipping on. And that's where I feel like people start to grow. And you're right. Companies nowadays, I'm surprised at that statistic. I mean, it's sad that many people aren't engaged. But I think not just with the employees, I see that from a client perspective too. So if you think about some of the large brands and the people that are closing, I mean, Toys R Us just shut, brands that have been household names forever, they're not, I mean, the Amazon effect is obviously there, but those brands aren't closing because of Amazon. Those brands are closing because they failed to engage their clients. So I think there's an engagement with leadership, but there's also an engagement with the people that we're serving.
Absolutely.
And to the extent that companies and brands and people can engage with the clients, which is where you guys have a unique opportunity to be able to say, hey, this is our lane. We're going to engage and get you engaged. But then it's up to the attendees and the companies that are sending people to keep them engaged after that. So what can individuals or companies do to foster more engagement, do you think?
Well, as I'm looking at this, so the one thing in this book is it talks about wholeness, and that we need to provide environments at our workplace that allow people to feel whole and to be whole. So it's what are they driven by? Not only does the organization know what their why is, but have you even asked your employees what is their why?
Right.
And so it's through that wholeness, I think, recognizing it and then understanding. They gave I'm a visual learner of the Russian dolls that are inside of each other.
Yeah, okay.
And so they talk about, okay, you can have this old culture that functioned on return on investment, and it was all driven by what you were returning to your shareholders. Right. But then there's this new, the biggest Russian doll on the outside is needing to know that they are matter, that they are engaged, and then also that you value them as a whole person.
Okay.
And that you can function, it's all in one thing, but you have to know that there are different levels.
And I think the layers of complexity, but the layers of a person, we never looked at that before. I mean, everything used to be ROI.
Yes.
What's my return on investment? And I feel like, a friend of mine, Ted Rubin, who's been CMO for a lot of large brands, he coined the phrase return on relationship, ROR, because he's like, I feel like that's where companies need to be. And it's so true. It's so true that to the extent we can really focus on the relationships and focus on being servant leaders is really where we have an opportunity.
It's all that matters, right? Yeah. I have a married couple on my team, and I watch them walk to their car every day. And in my head, I'm thinking, how was I as a leader? Because it didn't take one person to drive home to kick the dog because they had a bad day, because they had a bad leader. It's watching them walk out and know that momentarily, if I did something that caused one of them pain or distress as a leader, and pain meaning mental pain or stress, that it affects them immediately. Yeah. And I think we need to look at the homes that we actually have relationship to. Yeah. And that's truly what matters. And that's why we'll make the world a better place if we look at that.
And conversely, when you have a positive impact on them and you bring, joy and laughter, like we were talking about earlier, if you can bring that to them at work, it permeates. And I think so many people go to the office and they clock in, they clock out, and they're just not present, they're not engaged. And my hope is that they can find that spark. They can find something that kind of gets them moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk about habits and kind of high performance habits and things that you found from the leaders you've interacted with that's really made a difference in them and their lives. So after the break, we will be right back with Angela Raub and talk a little bit more.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Kristen. Be sure and visit my website at www.andregroup.com. That's www.andreegroup.com. And while you're there, be sure to download my white paper, Top 10 Reasons Your Business Isn't Growing Fast Enough. Now get out there and create your no limits moment. Welcome back to No Limits with Kristen Andre. We are here with Angela Raub, the Chief Sales Officer for Leadercast. And during the break, we were talking. You said something really interesting. We started talking about the people that are at Leadercast. And, my question to you was, what do they all have in common? There's something unique that make these people just, get on stage and give those aha moments. And you started talking about a story for yourself and kind of leading into habits. So share with me what we were talking about.
Well, as we have no limits, and when I went through the reduction in force, it was the next morning that I woke up, and after crying all night, and I had one of my best guy friends said to me, "Are you done insulting God?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Go out and do what you know how to do." And so it was through that I developed and managed pipelines in all my life, right? I sold eggs as a 4-year-old for my brother. So I took those habits, and it was very succinct. And in 12 weeks, I had 141 interviews and appointments and I had 3 job offers, and that was 2009 when the economy was the second worst Great Depression that we've had. And I had a job. And so it was through that I knew how to persevere things. But I love that what you do with No Limits, because it truly is our habits of highly effective effective people.
Yeah.
And if you hear all of our speakers on there, you will hear all of them who have habits they are constantly going over. And I love that.
So you mentioned, and I think it is true, that they just kind of continually do things. But you mentioned the pipeline management, and I'm intrigued because how did that relate to the Good Morning America thing?
So
that's a neat story.
I was sitting, getting my eyebrows done, and I was sitting next to a woman named Robin Spiesman, who is on Good Morning America, and she's overhearing the conversation. And Robin's like, I want to get you on the show. And I'm like, what? And she said, this is absolutely incredible. And so Tori Johnson, who is on there all the time. Yep. So I get an email and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. This is not happening. And then I ended up being on there. So I was sitting at Flying Biscuit and I hear Robin Roberts talk about a woman who defied odds. I'm going to start crying.
That's awesome, though.
There it was on TV, so it was a pretty incredible moment.
That is so cool. I mean, think about that, though. Well, first of all, congratulations, because that's super cool.
I don't know why that just made me tear up.
Well, no, I tear up when other people tear up. So, but I think what's so neat about that is you were just doing you. You took a bad situation and you were just talking about it. And we're all getting nails, eyebrows, all that stuff done. But to just be talking and to have somebody else recognize that's cool.
Yeah.
That must have felt really good.
It was really cool. And you were speaking earlier about fear. And, as a single parent, I worked in fear. I mean, I had this oh my gosh, people can't get a job. And here I am, and I need to do this for my daughter.
Yep.
And I knew I needed to do it quickly. And so, but through those different relationships, and that's what's been so great about my life is my mom calls me Forrest Gump. I've never met a stranger.
Yeah.
And end up in places where I'm just a chronic learner. And so that's a habit as well. I'm constantly trying to stretch myself. So.
But I think it's, the habits you mentioned, so pipeline management, being a chronic learner, those are habits. Those aren't things that people routinely do. And now it sounds like you routinely do it. It's just the way you kind of operate.
I am.
And I'm very much the same way. But I think to a lot of people, that's foreign. A lot of people aren't, the social butterfly and going and talking to everybody and striking up conversation when they're getting their hair done or what have you. But what's interesting is a lot of the very successful people I know, the opportunities that present themselves to them come from the least likely places.
And I completely agree with you, but I think the beautiful thing about that is when we are just authentically being who we are, right? So I'm sitting there looking horrible, getting my eyebrows done, but I'm having a conversation. And so that's why over the last year, I've grown even more confident in being, I will not apologize for being who I authentically am. And that I've done that gig working in male-dominated environments.
Absolutely.
I have a huge heart, and I think that my compassion and empathy are some of my greatest strengths.
Yep.
I used to think they were Achilles' heel, and it hardened my heart. And so through this process of that reduction in force and all those things, it also softened me. And I think that's what you hear with our speakers as well, and other great leaders like yourself. You're willing to talk about the weakness or the vulnerability.
And that's what, I really, really appreciate. One of the speakers you have at Leadercast that I'll mention is Andy Stanley. And, for people not familiar with Andy, he's a pastor of a very large church here. I happen to go to his church, so I see him speak a lot. Brilliant communicator. Brilliant. I mean, I love to hear him speak. But one of the things I've noticed, and the very first time I went to visit his church, is I felt like he just was talking. Like it wasn't this contrived speech. It wasn't this, 18 bullet points and that, which a lot of us tend to go to. He just was talking. He was open about his life, his family, his challenges, his struggles, and he had a lot of humor with it. And I think, like you said, that's just the authentic him. And it's, the speakers that I've seen that really have impacted me, that's what they do, is they bring their authentic self. And so you've done that for sure, which is fantastic. How can others do that?
I think that to really have defining moments, if you're not going through something difficult right now and you're only focused on the difficulty, but I think to really look through it, it's like that saying, if you just keep staring at your fingers and eventually you'll see that if you put them together, I see three, or one floating in the middle. And I think that for us to look at those situations and really think, how can I grow? You talk about Andy, and Andy talks about difficulties that he and his father had, two very public figures figures.
Very public.
Andy, probably one of the greatest orators of our time, regardless of what your belief system is.
Yep.
And that's what I love about having him on our stage, because I go to more Fortune 500 meetings where people will say, I'll say, who's our favorite speaker? And it is almost always an Andy Stanley, regardless of what their cultural, how they were raised or their belief system. And I think that's just amazing.
And I think it's with him, what I've always said about him, and a lot of the great leaders are, they're good communicators. I feel like they listen. Even if you've never met him, when he's talking, you're like, he just said that to me. I mean, I've sat there and, sometimes my friends nudging me going, yep, he's talking right to you. But sometimes I just feel like the communication skill level and style. But if you really boil it down, I don't think Andy's sitting there I could be wrong, I don't think he's taking public speaking classes. I think he's just being real. And, that may be something that's an opportunity.
I agree with that. And that's for us, is that we really want people that's why we have diversity of stories and experiences on that stage, so we can have greater influence on more people, that one thing will resonate for people. But I think what you will hear across that stage is authenticity and transparency, because people are willing to tell about their greatest mess ups. Okay. Today in my sales team meeting, that's what I talked about. I opened up with a big failure that I had, and how every once in a while, that was when I was 18, I still wake up, like jolt up, and relive that. And so what am I supposed to be gleaning from that? And so we talked about waking up in the morning and a fresh start and a new video. And so how we have to forgive ourselves as well. And I think forgiveness of self and transparency and authenticity is the secret sauce for people really seeing exponential growth personally and as a leader.
Yeah, I like that. Forgiveness of self. Transparency, I've heard, we talk about that a lot. And I think that's starting to become more conversational in the corporate environment. But forgiveness of self, the way you said that, I like that a lot, because we don't talk about that. I mean, that's an area I think a lot. We may amongst our closest group of friends, or amongst, when girlfriend night, when we all get together, but corporately and professionally, I don't know if people talk about that a lot. I think, even if it's something that you're holding against yourself that you did business-wise. I made a bad decision. All of us have made bad business decisions.
Yes.
So really being able to figure out, okay, how can I forgive myself? How can we move forward?
I think, it's when you talk about that, it sits here even more. And I'm like, every day when I go home from my office, this is going to sound like such a nerd, but here it is. I'm authentic. I do a SWOT analysis for myself as a leader. And so what is my strength for the day? And where was I weak?
Yeah.
And where do I have opportunity for growth? And then threat is, how did I threat any person on my team or that I had interaction with to feel thwarted or to feel minimized? Because that's the greatest failure as a leader, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that SWOT analysis before, and all of us, most of us in corporate or that coach or consult have done SWOT analysis. I love the fact you do it on yourself, and it's nerd. You can be nerdy. We'll let you do it every day, but that's okay, because I like that, and so we'll dive into that a little bit more, because we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
And when we come back at the end of every episode, I like to issue a challenge to the listeners. So you and I are going to chat a little bit during the break, and let's come up with something good.
Oh, I'm excited.
I know that we can offer the listeners, and something they can do to engage them and grow them a little bit more. So we're going to take a short break, and we will be back in just a few minutes with Angela Raub from Leadercast. Hey everyone, check out my podcast, No Limits with Kristen Andre, on Tuesday nights at 7:30. We will tackle the things holding you back and the limits you set on yourself, and equip you with some strategies to lead more intentional lives. Podcast launches every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on facebook.com/Andre Group. That's facebook.com/ANDREE Group. We'll see you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the No Limits podcast with Kristen Andre. We are here with Angela Raub of Leadercast. And just before the break, Angela was sharing with us her nerdy moment that she likes to do in the evening. And in talking about it, I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think you guys will really, really, really love this. So walk us through the SWOT analysis that you're doing at night, because I think that's a fantastic challenge that we'll pose to the group.
All right, great. It actually starts when I hit the car, and so as I definitely start with what was my strength today, and that means as a leader, and that is how do I help people grow and develop. Okay. It's not. It was about me, and I had one heck of a win today. It really is about the development of others and how I serve people as a servant leader, and I think for that is I've really spent a big theme for me over the last year is just being truly humble. I hear a lot of people who say they're humble. Right. And when people preface statements with that, I think they're telling us they're not being humble. Right. And so with that is by looking at that strength is there's always room for improvement. But also I go to my executive coach and say, is that a strength that you identify? Because I also want someone to keep me real on that and not start focusing on things that potentially could be a fatal threat, right? As far as my development. And I'm talking about the job that you do. And then, but with that, so for the weakness, it's really about, again, how was I weak as a leader? And that means as that servant. And I want you to know that I look at this from all respects of a leadership role, but also physically. I exercise. I adhere to, most of the time, a Whole30. So I look at, how did I feel today? Okay, I had 2 Reese's cups because I ate my feelings after a meeting that I felt like I failed in, or I wasn't a good leader, or didn't have some returns that I like to see. And so through that, and then that opportunity is where I'll try to go home and write notes. And then also I do searches. So again, I'm a nerd in the fact that I look for, and in this day and age, we have so many resources, is I challenge the people that our audience to do this and go out and then find things that you feel like I could have opportunity for growth. Here's some quick resources, and then how can I work on that? But most importantly, threat. I spoke earlier about as individual contributors, we have the opportunity, but I also believe we have the tremendous responsibilities as human beings to make people's lives better as a servant leader. Yep. And so through threat, maybe you start with that, but that is truly when we make the world a better place, if people start looking at how they threaten others. And that could be through heart, through hate, and heart meaning how you should love on people, but as opposed to someone who may have hateful or judgment. So that's how I walk through that on a daily basis.
I love the way you do that, because, I've always thought about it so much in my head in terms of to the business, my strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats of my business, and of me as a person as a switch. And I think that's fantastic, because that's really how I can be a leader, how I can be a better leader for my clients, for my employees, my team, my family, my kid, everybody, my friends. So I love that idea. So thank you for sharing that with us. So the challenge to you guys out here listening is do your own SWOT analysis. Every day. Start, like Angela said, at the minute you hit the car and do your SWOT analysis. And we've got a great Facebook group for you. We want you to get engaged. So follow us on Facebook. The hashtag is No Limits Challenge. And actually, you know what? Let's do this. No Limits Moment, So No Limits Moment is the name of the group. Go to the group, share your experience with the SWOT analysis. Tag some friends that you want to do the SWOT analysis with you, and hold each other accountable, because it's going to be a lot more fun in groups. So I know Angela's been doing it. I'm going to start. I think it's a great idea. So you can help hold me accountable and see how my SWOT analysis is going. But to all you guys listening, this would be a great step in your personal development. So we hope that you will jump on the page, tag some friends, and engage with us. And don't forget, Leadercast is coming up for those of you guys in Atlanta, May
4th at the Infinity Energy Arena.
May 4th, I will be there. And if you're not local, be sure and check them out online, and you can find ways you can watch it. There's a lot of areas around the country that's broadcasting it.
Around the world, yes. So you can go out, and we have a host site finder, so put your zip code in and it will take you directly to someplace in your community that you can watch Leadercast live on May 4th.
So that'd be a great way to meet some new people. So we thank you for being here with the No Limits with Kristen Andre podcast, and until next time, go out and make great things happen.